I've just paused the video to let people catch up and get on. I can see there are 8 people on. It's Margaret here, the Vicar of Christchurch, and I'm just waiting people to get on. I had a few problems starting the broadcast this evening, not quite sure why. Sorry about that, but it's now going live on Facebook. So I'm just waiting for a few more people to join, and then I will unpause and we can go into the talk with John Philpott-Howard on the human body, infection and the resurrection. And I'm just getting a few messages from people. So I'm just replying. So you can see we've got 14 people on now. So do join and just give me a couple of moments. And oh yeah, I can see some comments and reaction coming on. Sorry, the streaming device for YouTube wouldn't work again. I will definitely get that going next time. I couldn't get it going from this morning, so got 17 people on now, so just give it a couple more minutes until just see if anyone else wants to come on. Okay, so I've just paused it for a moment while we make sure everyone's on, and I will, at 7:07, I will rewind to the beginning and we can start afresh. You should have seen the waterfall rewind then. Okay. Okay, so we've got 16 people on. I'll just give it another 2 minutes and then I'll press the button. Okay, so let anyone else know that you know who you think might be interested, that it's going to start shortly. Right. Okay, are we ready? Let's go.
Hello, and welcome to this short talk entitled The Human Body, Infections and the Resurrection. I do hope you find it of interest, especially in the season of Easter, as we think about the resurrection body of Christ and what that might mean for us. There will be a time of discussion at the end, so do stay on to join in that. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the amazing human body and the damage to our bodies and human suffering. And then a bit about infections and their origins. And finally, some thoughts about the afterlife and the resurrection body, particularly as shown by Jesus. When I was 18, back in the 70s, I started at medical school. After 2 or 3 introductory weeks, about 50 of us, wet behind the ears teenagers, fresh from school, were ushered into a large modern hall. Here, many human corpses were laid out on steel tables. We were told to turn over our bodies and then shake hands with them because they were our friends, as they would teach us a great deal about human anatomy. Several years later, I spent a few months performing autopsies at St. Bartholomew's Hospital. It felt like a great privilege to find out why a person had died. As a result of these experiences, I have always had an acute sense of our mortality. It stays with you. One of the things post-mortem work often brought to my mind was from Psalm 139. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Human anatomy is beautiful, but on top of that, we studied the immense wonder and complexity of every living cell in the body and all the extraordinarily intricate chemical processes that take place in living things. The development of a human being from a single fertilized egg into an infant, a child, and then an adult is truly astonishing. Here are some staggering statistics about the human body. Your heart beats about 100,000 times a day, and this means it beats more than 3 billion times in the average human lifespan. The nose can detect about 1 trillion smells. On a genetic level, all human beings are more than 99% identical. We have between 2 and 5 million sweat glands. Small blood vessels are amazingly long. If they were laid out end to end, they'd measure more than 60,000 miles. The human adult has 2,000 to 4,000 taste buds, and the surface area of the lungs is up to 75 square meters, 800 square feet, about one side of a tennis court. Above all, perhaps the most miraculous part of us is our brain, often acknowledged as the most complex object in the known universe. Here is where the seat of consciousness lies, as we look out into the world. In scientific literature, human consciousness is known as the hard problem. How is it that 1.5 kilos, 3 pounds of wet tissue can hold all our consciousness and our sense of being? How do trillions of nerve cell connections produce a mind that can consider the past, present, and future? And when we die, what happens to our consciousness, to our memories and our thoughts? Are they lost forever? And then even before we die, our body renews itself. All the molecules of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and so on, are replaced every 2 or 3 years through our nutrition. We change completely, yet I am still me. So where does my identity lie? If we contemplate these issues as Christians, we can develop a deeper wonder at God's creation of human beings and of all things. It says in Psalm 8, "You have made them a little lower than God," or a little lower than the heavenly beings, "and you have crowned them with glory and honor." The immune system is also remarkably organized and incredibly complex, with its antibodies, a range of white cells such as lymphocytes and neutrophils, and many other elements that protect us against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. In the current coronavirus epidemic, we're just beginning to learn about how the immune system deals with this invader and how it sometimes overreacts. There are many things that can harm human beings and cause suffering: violence, accident, heat, radiation and chemicals, infectious agents, as I just said, genetics, congenital harm and childbirth risks, and inadequate nutrition. But humans, the species Homo sapiens, has an amazing ability to learn to minimize these risks of harm and reduce suffering, especially in the modern era. And in addition, we have that ability to pass on information and learning to others through speech and writing. This has allowed us to conquer the planet, not always in a good way, and colonize even the most inhospitable places of our world. It's true that many animals can also adapt. For example, seals and penguins. They can live in Antarctica's freezing conditions, but they're unable to live in most other environments. In contrast, humans, here in the British Antarctic Survey, can live in any environment, even the vacuum of space. In the Genesis story of creation, God says, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it." And we have the God-given abilities to do so because we are made in His image. The world itself is a remarkable place for life, with air, water and sun, but many other aspects of the earth that help us survive. We find ourselves in a world that's sometimes a beautiful paradise, and at other times a harsh and difficult place with risks of harm. We also know that human beings are able to perpetrate terrible evils against their fellow human beings. When we think about infections and their origin, we might wonder why God has created microbes that bring us harm. Some of them are disturbingly unpleasant and cause much suffering: viruses, bacteria, fungi and parasites, as well as insects and arachnids. But not all bugs are bad. The normal flora of the human body is a lot of bacteria that live on and in us, and we need these for healthy living. Only a small proportion of bugs are harmful to living things, are known as pathogens. The powerful image of infection was not lost on some past Christian writers, such as the 16th century reformer John Calvin, who wrote, "All of us who have descended from impure seed are born infected with the contagion of sin." Reformer John Calvin, who wrote, returning to infection in the medical sense, new viruses and bacteria arise all the time. Sometimes because of mutation, a new virus arises, like influenza, or an established virus or bacterium crosses from animals to humans, and coronavirus is an example. Or a virus or bacterium's been causing disease for centuries. Only recently we discovered, in the last 150 years, what caused these diseases. And occasionally outbreaks of infection such as cholera occur after a major disaster. Underlying these infections that arise in the world are some types of human activity. Climate change is allowing certain tropical diseases like malaria to spread. Poverty underlies a lot of risk of disease, as people don't have enough money to live healthily. We mistreat animals. Eating bushmeat has led to spread of viruses, and our farming practices are sometimes inappropriate and intensive, leading to outbreaks of infection such as mad cow disease and salmonella. Having said all that, human activity has also brought about many benefits, such as clean water, sewage disposal, vaccines, and antibiotics, which have made a huge difference to our world. We should be grateful that our God-given intellect, through medicine and research, has achieved huge benefits for humankind. All we need to do now is to share those benefits equally around the world. Ultimately, of course, we know our body's existence is finite. Some people are frozen in liquid nitrogen, hoping to be resuscitated later, or they think they might be able to download their consciousness onto a microchip. But for most of us, we recognize that our time here on earth is limited. Almost all religions maintain a belief that somehow the human spirit survives death and ultimately gains a new life with God, or in some religions, the spirit experiences reincarnation as a new being. In Orthodox Christian understanding, we live once and then continue our individual human nature with God in some way. We consider that God, through Christ, has brought forgiveness and teaches us how to live in a way that's in harmony with a loving God. But the nature of the afterlife is problematic. We want to know. Perhaps Jesus and the resurrection body gives us some clues. We recognize that he was resurrected to a new body and not resuscitated like Lazarus. We see his body bore marks of his crucifixion, which is interesting. We see different stages after the resurrection, for example, the ascension. He could appear in locked rooms and could come or go at will. Paul kind of discourages us against idle speculation, but he says the body is perhaps like a seed, but we don't know what it will be eventually. And finally, Christ promised to the thief on the cross has engaged many. Today you will be with me in paradise. Although we do understand that the word paradise might mean garden and therefore some kind of waiting area. Richard Rohr, the writer and monk, suggests that we should not worry ourselves too much, that we should be ready and present to God in the here and now and the ordinary and the interruptions, and be fully present to the soul of all things, to say what is good, this is enough, this is all I need. Why wait for heaven when you can enjoy the divine flow in every moment and in everyone? Amen.
So there's now going to be a discussion on Zoom. If you've got the MailChimp from Christchurch East Greenwich, which came on Friday afternoon, there's a link to the Zoom discussion in that mail. If you don't have the link and you'd like it, please ask me by some sort of messaging system or email, and I'd be very glad to send it to you. I'll also send it to all our Connect group leaders to pass it on. So do join us in 5 minutes, starting at 7:30 in our Zoom room. And I can see from the comments that people have really enjoyed your talk. So thank you very much to Reverend John Philpott-Howard for all the work you've put into preparing this talk, which has been really challenging and really interesting, and I'm sure will stimulate some really good discussion. So John and I will be jointly hosting the Zoom room, and John will be happy to take any questions and be sharing some more slides and thoughts so that we can continue the conversation and continue thinking about this really important topic. So do join us in the Zoom room starting at 7:30 p.m. And if you don't have the invitation, let me or someone else from Christchurch know and we will pass it on to you. Thank you for joining us. Bye.